All right, hello, hello.
Hello! It is us, the
Welcome.
bugs.
Yes, it is us, the bugs. Welcome to the first episode of Bugs in Battle. It's going to
Yee.
be disorganized, it's going to be a little awkward, it's going to be a whole bunch of fun, and you're going to watch two people stress about talking about hobbies, and we're going to panic the whole way through. It's going to be great. Thank you. I know that.
Of course. But I am special too. But anyway, yeah, we've been wanting to do this for a really long time. So
God, yeah, it's been months, honestly.
I'm just kind of glad it's finally happening. But
Oh God, for real.
we've had... It's weird how low and how much prep we've had at the same time.
Oh yeah, no, it's some little behind the scenes. This really only got started up when me and Motte kind of looked at each other and were like, we finally have to do it.
Yeah. And that was like
We
a
have to
month
stop
ago.
procrastinating. And that was like a month and a half ago.
Yeah.
It was rough.
Yeah. It's the entire time we were just like, yeah, we should do this. Months pass. Hey, we should totally do this, right?
Yeah, were you still up for that thing that we planned 7 months ago? Yeah.
But yeah,
And
I
then
guess...
finally we were just like, it's time.
Yes, especially because October and Halloween actually gave us a good starting point with going with kind of thematic thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Like, God, we ended up looking through so many kind of spooky horror RPGs and such. And
There were a lot of really good contenders.
There were. But also, I'm not gonna read a 300-page rulebook. As
Sad
like our
days.
pilot episode. So maybe once we're more experienced.
Right, maybe once we're more experienced, but let's just kind of go in what is of Bugs in Battle. I'll
Yep.
just kind of talk about that for just a moment. Me and Motte are both huge fans of TTRPGs, Dungeons and Dragons, Call of Cthulhu, Dark Heresy. It runs in our blood. It is our favorite things. It's literally one of the only things we talk about. It's video games, life is suffering, D&D.
Pretty much. And when it's not any of those three, it's usually just like, hey, so I made a new character. Should I make them a D&D character?
Exactly. And so this series, for lack of a better word, I hope it becomes a series,
Yes.
is us expressing our love for D&D in general, TTRPGs, role-playing, but we wanted to do something a bit special.
Yes.
D&D is
because-
fantastic.
Exactly, but everyone talks about D&D. I think everyone and their mother at this point knows about D&D, and whilst there is a bunch of like really cool indie D&D stuff out there, what often gets overlooked is smaller publishers who kind of create their own things, or who create things based on other lesser-known systems.
Exactly.
And so we kind of wanted to give those people also a spotlight in some capacity. So,
So, we all know D&D 5th edition, 4th, well not really 4th, but, you know.
you know
3.5,
fourth, I
even
don't.
2nd
but-
edition. Oh god, don't talk about 4th. It's... I like 4th, but I talk shit about it all the time. That should say something. Hey, what's up, Lexi? You're just
Also,
in time.
hello,
You're kind of
yes.
explaining what's going on.
Yes, we're just going over it.
So, this series of what we're going to be doing is us just talking about interesting indie TTRPGs we find, possibly themed, possibly... I don't know, possibly. That's kind of
Yeah.
the big thing here.
Yeah.
We just want to talk about D&D that isn't standard 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes, it's one thing I've also just noticed with how you talk about TTRPGs is that it's so in the public conscious that everything just gets referred to as D&D at this point.
Yes, it is a catch-all terms. It's D&D.
Yeah, when
D&D
people
is such a big thing. It is TTRPGs.
exactly, but so yeah, we just want to focus on some of the maybe lesser known things, and for today we actually found one that I actually stumbled across from another RPG called Wonder Home, but this one is made by the same people and is called Sleepaway. And it's about summer camp. but spooky. And things go horribly wrong.
Yeah, definitely. Sleepaway so far has been a fantastic read.
Yeah, I've skimmed it a couple times. I kind of want to like do the deep dive during this video and kind of give more of my first impressions as we're going through this. At least that's how I like to approach these things, because God, Cole and I have had so many times where we found a new RPG and I would just like go through it and word vomit my first impressions at him.
Oh yeah, it was fantastic. Every time it's happened, it's awesome.
And that's basically what this is going to be. In addition...
This isn't us reviewing a product. This isn't trying to sell anything.
Exactly.
This is us talking about a neat book we found, and this may interest you.
Yes, this is basically a book club, but about TTRPGs. Of course, in the description, I do have the links to Sleepaway there for people who are interested and want to check it out, but we're not here to sell it to you guys, and we're not sponsored or anything. Just, putting that out there for, like, legal reasons and all that. But to just kind of elaborate a little bit further, I do kind of have a background in TTRPGs and being an indie publisher. I've published stuff for 5th edition. Like, there's a supplement I have on the DM's Guild that has hit, like, copper bestseller and stuff like that. And I do work with a lot of D&D indie publishers. And that's kind of like... I kind of want to branch out, personally, because there's so much cool stuff out there. And... God, I wish I had the time to see it all,
Yeah, and I think this is going to be an excuse to see a lot more of it. And
Yes.
so, me personally, I don't have experience publishing or anything like that, but D&D, specifically D&D 2nd edition, and older editions of D&D I've played for a very long time. I've played different TTRPG systems since I was 7. I've been DMing for the past 13 years.
That's a whole lot of years.
I spend my time collecting different TTRPG systems. Just to my left, I have 3 Call of Cthulhu books. I have 5th edition books. I have the Conan the Barbarian RPG system. Never played that. Don't think I'll ever play it. Definitely needed it.
Listen, sometimes you just want to have books. And that's just how it
Sometimes you
is.
just need books. And so, that kind of fueled my desire to run this.
Yeah, so...
And have fun talking about this and all of that. So, I mean...
Yeah, and I guess, like, when we do talk about these books, like, not just in this part, but also possible future episodes, I'm gonna be looking at these often through the lens of a player, first and foremost, and an artist second. I tend to focus a lot on, like, oh, how easy is it to make a character? What do I need to know as the player? And also because I do publishing and I do art, I kind of often love to look at, oh, how is this book laid out? How easy is it to read? What's the art style like? So you'll probably get some insights on that from me.
For me, on the other hand, I'll be taking it in the lens of a game master. It's one of the things I take a lot of pride in. I have a whole bunch of fun running games for people. So, I have years of experience to draw on that. So it'll be my lens of trying to run a game, which is going to be really interesting for Sleepaway.
Yes. So I think we should just go straight into it.
Yeah, definitely.
So we've got our nice Sleepaway PDF over here now. Basically, I do want to just quickly start with the cover. I love the cover illustration. There is a lot of, like, little neat things going on. I think the thing that stands out to me the most is actually the quote-unquote villain or villainous creature. And the fact that it has, like, 8 fingers on each hand. That's, like, the first thing I noticed when I was looking at this. I'm like, oh, this looks neat. Oh, what is that?
Yeah, no, definitely.
I think from, like, an art perspective, it's a really neat and simple way to bring across the kind of horror aspect that this book is going to have. In addition, I do want to say, I love that the campers are all drawn as little babies. They are all tiny.
I love that. They're
And-
all tiny.
I didn't actually notice that until like literally earlier today, and love that.
It's fantastic. I really like this cover because it kind of establishes a whole bunch of different things. You have people who are camping, you have the person looking over their shoulder, nervous. It sets this kind of mystique.
Yes, and it sets the tone for the entire book really well. I'm just gonna like... Basically, how we're gonna do this, I'm gonna just keep scrolling through the PDF till I find things to talk about, which... I have highlighted a bunch of things. One of those things that might be a little bit odd to people who aren't part of publishing and stuff, but I do appreciate that Possum Creek Games actually mentions what fonts they're using for both their title and like the body text. Because God, for 5th edition, when I write for D&D stuff, it has been a pain especially when I first got into it. It was such a pain to figure out, oh, what fonts do they use? How do I make this look official? So, yeah, just a small thing I found really neat. And also here you have all of the credits, all of the amazing people that worked on this. And as you can see, this is a really small team. So, this just shows that even with a really small team, you can make really cool stuff. And don't let the fact that you're only working on things by yourself, or maybe you and a friend, don't let that dissuade you from just making things and putting it out into the world.
I think the biggest thing to take away from this is that put your foot in the door. Do it if you want to.
Exactly.
We have the internet. It's so much help these days. If you don't ever do it, you're never going to go far.
Exactly. Next up, as you can see on screen, there's just the author bio. I'm going to leave that here for a quick second so people can read it. But as it mentions in there, the author does write a bunch of like about horror, about marginality, and one thing you will see further in the book, there's a lot of focus on being inclusive in really subtle ways, actually. Just like, I'll just kind of like talk about this now, but one thing that's like that I really liked is during character creation, you are just very passively asked, hey, what pronouns does your character use? And that's just an important part of your character. I don't think I've ever seen a D&D character sheet that had a space for pronouns or anything of that sort.
This is the first character sheet that hasn't just had like a flat gender section, if it even involved that.
Yes. And the way this book, at least like for me as a trans person, the way this book actually talks about gender and the characters is really interesting, and honestly one of the best ways I've seen gender approached in tabletop RPGs. But we'll get to that later once we actually get to the character section.
We will point out as we go along some of the details on that.
Yes.
Because they're really subtle, honestly.
Yes. Then Jay, the author, does list a bunch of design inspirations. When you get if you guys do end up getting the PDF, also check out the other things that Jay was inspired by, because usually if you're inspired by something, it shows in your work, and usually, at least like that's how it works for me. If I like something, I also check out inspirations, because there's a high likelihood that I will like those as well. Okay. So, next up we have the table of contents, which you can tell there's actually quite a lot going on in this book. One thing I do want to mention that I have a bit of a criticism with. I really wish that there were hyperlinks in this PDF, or bookmarks, or anything of that sort.
I can agree with that completely.
Like,
I found myself, I read this primarily on my phone while I was out camping. Ironic.
Mm-hmm.
And I got lost in this book so many times.
Yeah.
Just because I lost my page number.
Yes. Either that, or there's a couple of things where it refers to things that only get mentioned way later in the book, or were just mentioned like right at the beginning that you may have forgotten about. And it's really hard to like, scroll all the way back up, scroll all the way back down. Just like a small thing that I thought is kind of an oversight, especially with PDFs. Like, it's an accessibility issue in my opinion. Hyperlinks are just so much better. And if...
They help.
Yeah, they really help. And I do hope...
Another thing is if you mention a subject in a book, in parentheses, put the page number.
Yeah. They did it once or twice. I've seen that...
But they didn't do it consistently.
Yes. That did bother me a little bit. But overall, since the book isn't that long... And, like, a lot of, like, for example, the character sheets are, like, 3 pages long for each archetype. It's, like, not too bad. Like, it's not super dense in content, if that makes sense, or it's super dense in general. But it just would have been nice to be able to, like, more easily jump around throughout the PDF.
Oh, for sure.
Because, like, in real life, you're gonna be able to put sticky notes in and stuff like that. Or, like, the little marker thingies.
Overall, this complaint is relatively minor, but
Yes.
it is still noticeable when trying to access it from online.
Yes, exactly. It's why I wanted to bring it up, just because, like, it was something that did annoy me a little bit when I was, reading through this. Okay. So, I guess first part is how to play. I do want to mention the art real quick. Each chapter has a little, like, black and white illustration. All of them are usually really cute and really show the, like, spirit behind the summer camp.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I really like that. But yeah. God, so this first bit is gonna be pretty dense, I think, because it's, like, the most important thing. Understanding how to play this game.
It actually took me reading this book 3 times before I understood what was happening. But that's because I'm looking for more complex stuff. This is a very rules-light game, which I didn't get at first.
Yes, it is
I look
rules
for
light,
rules.
but it still has a lot of nuance and complexity to it, just not in a way that you might be used to if you come from, like, D&D.
Yes, now, this is actually a very hard game to come to after playing something very rigid. Like D&D.
But it might be really good for, like, people's first experience with role-playing, for example, because it puts such a heavy emphasis on the role-playing aspect as opposed to, like, crunching of numbers and turn orders and things like that. So, yeah,
Let me read some of this introduction just to get this
Yeah.
out of the way, because I think this is a fantastic way of setting it up.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Sleepaway gives us long, hazy days, chilled summer nights, kids screaming and chasing fireflies, crackling campfires, and a gaunt, cruel monstrosity forever hiding just out of sight, always asking, "What do you do next?" In Sleepaway, you play as a camp counselor at a not-so-ordinary summer camp, besieged by a strange and ominous cryptid. In the outside world, people grow increasingly alienated from their own identities. Trapped in a miasma of advertising and corporate branding, isolated from civilization, this summer camp is a beacon of safety, a refuge for misfit kids defined by their marginalization. As time pushes past and the world grows older, this camp also shelters the survivors of the Lindworm. The Lindworm is a shapeshifter, or so the stories go, a creature that flays the skin of humans and hides within. As counselors of this summer camp, you've each been traumatized by the Lindworm in your own ways. You remember little of that time, just that you don't want anyone else to experience it either, and you'll keep this camp safe no matter what.
And I think that that's, like, honestly a beautiful introduction that really sets the tone of the entire book. And
Exactly.
everything that follows.
It's an interesting one where it's about happiness, but at the same time it's paranoia that what's behind your shoulder feel.
Okay, I do wanna just move ahead a little bit to what's needed to play this, which I found really interesting. I'm usually so used to like, oh, you need like 5 different sets of dice and stuff like that. But this book takes a really unique take on what you need to play. So obviously you need your character sheets and such. There is also something called setting element sheets, which we'll get to later, which I thought was really interesting. But you'll need pencils and paper, some index cards, a deck of playing cards, then something that you can use as tokens like pebbles, beads, or coins, and then a cork board with string and push pins. Or, a piece of paper with different colored pens. Yeah.
I adore that. I love that so much.
What I love about this actually is these are all things you might have on you when you're out camping.
Yes.
Which makes this really accessible. Like, oh god, I remember, like, imagine going camping with like your bag of dice, and then all of a sudden your dice just get lost, in like the dirt and the leaves and all that. But no, here it's just like, yeah, no, you pick up some pretty rocks, you have your pencils and paper, and maybe a cork board or like, a big piece of paper with some colored pens.
Mm-hmm.
This book also has right at the end, there's a one-shot and a campaign. The one-shot is about 3 to 4 hours long, and the campaign, according to the book, is 3 to 6 sessions, each of like 3 hours.
This is all depending on your play group.
Yes, how many players and all that. I've done
one-shots that it's like, this will be 3 hours. 11 hours later, we were all eating pizza and crying.
Yeah, I've also found one-shots where it's like, haha, this takes 5 hours, and then we're done in like 2. So
yeah.
It really depends on your group and how you approach role-playing and how long it also takes to learn the game.
Yeah.
Because it does say that a one-shot lasts about 3 to 4 hours, including time spent learning how to play. This is especially the learning how to play is very subjective. As we said, it took us a couple times reading the book to kind of somewhat understand how to play it. But
yeah.
That's because we had a very different background.
Mm-hmm.
Immediately after, you do get a, little... Like, you can just print out this page on how to get started, which has just, like, step-by-step on what you need to do to set up. All of this here is very self-explanatory. Like, read the introduction... read several of these other sections out loud, etc. Like draw a map, then read the Lindworm section, etc. And, very self-explanatory. I think that this part is probably what takes the longest for setup. It's just reading everything out loud to the rest of the group.
This book has a lot of transparency. There isn't a lot you're trying to hide from the players.
Yes.
Because everyone is the player here.
Exactly. That is something that, took me a second to actually understand that, oh no, you're all the DM and you're all the player.
Yes. How this works we'll get to in just a little bit.
Yes. This is kind of a dense page, but the one thing that the main takeaway is what I've highlighted, I think, is just that you and the other players go back and forth talking about these fictional characters in their fictional circumstances, doing whatever it is that they do. Like any conversation, you take turns, but it's not like taking turns, right? Sometimes you talk over each other, interrupt, build on each other's ideas, monopolize, and hold forth. All fine. And that's what basically this entire RPG is. It is just talking to each other, but in a make-believe way, if that makes sense.
Yes, it is. It's what you did as a kid when you all sat in a circle and made a story.
Exactly.
And that brings me back. And I love it. It took me a minute to realize what it was, but when I did kind of realize, I had this stupid grin on my face as I was reading this book at 2 a.m. in the sleeping bag,
Yeah, it's like, God, that does remind me of when you're all children, it's like, oh, I attack you, no, I shield it, and then it's like, no, but I have a laser that can shoot you from behind, and just kind of trying to one-up each other, but obviously now that we're older and there is some like guidelines to this. Obviously, you can't always keep one-upping each other. But maybe you can,
Who knows?
So, God, this next section, the playing the game section, is really dense. I had a lot of trouble fully understanding what's happening here. Because there's a lot of intro text that doesn't really mean a lot. And then they later summarize it, which is basically you make moves with your character, and making moves is essentially just you talk, but about a specific thing. And these specific things are noted on your character sheets or on little printouts that you get for each of the locations you can go to, etc. It's all very free form and very, how do I phrase this? Very loose. So I do like that they try to, explain it to you in a very simple way, but it's still kind of an out there concept if you've never done anything like this.
Mm-hmm.
I did highlight that, you can find moves on the character sheet, the setting element sheets, or in a ritual, which are all things that contribute to this storytelling. I did also highlight that some moves are questions that are written in italics and preceded by ask, which is basically kind of out of character talking, but still in a narrative way. Cole does actually something similar in one of his campaigns, where sometimes we just kind of jump out of character to talk where we want to go next and just have a conversation above board. And this is kind of similar, I feel like, at least from what I've seen of what these questions are like. At least that's what I feel like. You may disagree with me, Cole.
No, it's a little similar. These above board questions are just really easy because I find a lot of times in more, I wouldn't say hardcore games or anything, but more structured games, people get caught in characters. Well, I want to go here. This character wants to go here. And so you get these characters all trying to go to different places, and you talk to each other in character instead of just, hey, look, bro, can we go here?
Yes.
And so what is a 5-minute conversation can often become a 30-minute argument.
It has happened.
It has happened.
And it'll
and
probably
someone
happen.
always feels shafted.
Yup.
And it'll probably happen again. But these just help move the game forward.
Yes, I think that's also why Jay decided to call them moves, because it is all about moving the game in different directions. It does explain that there is strong, regular, and weak movements. So basically for strong movements, you use one of your tokens that you may have accumulated, and that's basically moving the game into a positive direction or something that would benefit the camp counselors and the campers. Then there's regular moves, which is just it can go either way. It's just kind of we'll see what happens. And then there is weak moves, which allow you to, first of all, get tokens, but with weak moves, you kind of play into the Lindworm. Weak moves leave you off worse than where you started out.
So it's an interesting thing, if you mind me taking over right
go
here
ahead,
and
go
just
ahead.
explaining a small mechanic. There are 3 different moves. They're your actions: weak, normal, strong. A weak move negatively impacts your character or the game, but gives you a token. A normal move moves the game forward. It is not negative, it is not positive, it is a move. A strong move is something that cannot be taken away from you. This happens, it positively impacts the game, but it costs a token.
Exactly.
To take a strong move, you must take a weak move.
And
this is the foundation of Sleepaway.
Yes, exactly. And I do like that with how the tokens work, it always creates a sort of balance. for everything good, there has to be something bad, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else you want to add to the moves section? Or
Not necessarily. The moves are pretty cut and dry. Where it gets interesting is the character sheets, where they
Yes.
actually go into description of what the different counselors, let's call them counselors instead of
Yes.
classes,
Yes.
different strengths are, and their
Yes.
different weaknesses.
So, one thing I do want to bring up real quick, some of the pages do have sidebars. And something that I personally really like about these sidebars is that, especially the no complicity one, if you do end up buying the game, do just read through it in its entirety, but it establishes boundaries and how to deal with power balance. Like, you are a counselor, and you're all players, and you're all the DM, and no one's allowed to, like, manipulate each other or the campers. You know?
Yeah, no,
It's-
that's really important to me. Is this entire section goes into detail about this is not a power fantasy.
Yes.
This is not a place for you to abuse others through role playing. This is for fun.
Yes, and it puts a heavy emphasis on, like, no, your counselors are fundamentally want to make sure that the campers are safe. That is not up for argument. Like, I'm sure we've all had, like, that one experience where, like, maybe an adult or something didn't, like, care too much about you and just, like, let you get in harm's way. No, these camp counselors will make sure to keep the campers safe. And that's just how it is. But yeah, it also, like, goes into some more safety mechanics, talking about something that they refer to as lines, veils, and highlights, which kind of, like, goes off of the previous thing of, like, talking about, like, where are your boundaries, what are you okay with, what are you not okay with, what do you want to explore, and I really like the section. It puts it in very simple terms on how to approach this type of conversation, and I think it's an important conversation to have at a table.
Completely agree.
Because God, I've had way too many games where, we didn't have this conversation and then something happened in game that just was a step too far and left everyone upset because usually people don't want to overstep boundaries. But yeah, it happens. And I'm glad that, especially I've seen this actually a lot in indie games where they make sure to have some sort of safety mechanics directly in the book.
It is very common in indie games to talk about this, and I feel like larger publishers really need to adopt at least a page talking about this.
Yes, I totally
Because
agree.
we all hear the horror stories about playing very specifically D&D with a group, and it's just a nightmare because you have someone who is that guy.
Yes. I mean, we've seen a lot in, like, even live streams that people do online just thinking it's okay to do, like, horrible things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of these things could be avoided with safety mechanics, or, like, at least some sort of conversation prior to starting a game. And if you didn't have it prior to starting the game, like, if it's a new concept to you, you can always set aside your entire group and be like, hey, can we actually establish boundaries? This should never be a bad conversation to have. But yeah, all of this away, we're finally at characters and how to make characters what they are, etc. And I'm honestly quite excited about this part of the book in particular.
Yes, this is where I knew this game was for me.
Yes. You want to go ahead and, like, talk about your thoughts first?
Yeah, definitely. I think I'm just gonna read the Your Character page. Because it just kind of helped me out.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
To play your character, follow the tips in your playbook. Think about their behavior and trust your instincts. When you're not sure what they do, remember to keep them both fallible and relatable. Let them mess up big time, failing their friends in a time of need or blurting out desperate, painful secrets to all the wrong people, but always remember that they have a good reason for messing up. To make your character answer all the questions on your character sheet, including eyes, body, gender, and anything about your history and present. Then decide on a specific name and set of pronouns. Remember that these don't need to be the name or pronouns that your character has always used, or even those they use in spaces besides camp. These are the name and pronoun that make sense for now. Share them. Read your lure aloud, make sure everyone knows it. I love this
Yes.
entire page. I have always made characters, or at least tried to, now that I'm older and much wiser. I was once young and foolish. And I still am, but I'm much wiser now, I hope. Sweet God. A character with flaws is always more interesting than a character who always knows what to do. It's more fun to play. It's more fun to be around. A character who's bad in a fight, but good when talking to others. That's so much fun.
Yes. One thing I actually really appreciate is that this book just straight away says it's okay if your character messes up. Let your character mess up. It's okay to make mistakes.
Yes.
And there's usually a big, there's a lack of that kind of reassurance in a lot of books.
Stigma against making mistakes.
Yes.
How could
Exactly.
you make a mistake? We got hurt because of this. That's the point.
Yes. Sometimes people
D&D's
get hurt, and that's okay.
D&D and TTRPGs are always more exciting when something goes wrong.
And the other thing is, TTRPGs as a whole are a way for you to learn things, to explore not just yourself, but also process things. Like, when you mess up in a tabletop RPG, there is not usually no consequences out in real life, but it might help teach you how to maybe deal with similar situations in your day-to-day life. How to deal with arguments, how to deal with things that might make you anxious, etc. Or at least that's how I tend to feel like. Like, oddly enough, D&D has helped me a lot through some personal issues, and I didn't even realize it at the time. So, it's always nice to have this reassurance of hey, mess up, it's gonna be fine.
Right. I love this entire segment. It just kind of goes through my opinions on characters in role-playing games. People are people. People aren't
Exactly.
perfect. Don't play them perfect.
Exactly. In these next sections, you'll see some sidebars about pronouns and gender. I'm not going to go through them in depth or anything, but it basically just talks a little bit about how, it doesn't matter whether you're cis or trans or something else. Gender is inherently abstract, and it's okay if the gender of your character is abstract or if it isn't. It's just, use it to kind of explore yourself, explore your character, and just try to be respectful. That's all it really is. Then one thing I do want to read out loud, that's why I highlighted it, but when it talks about the setting elements and some rituals in this game, Sleepaway says, the world isn't just your characters. It's also the misty lake with its splintered dock, the cool woods and the whine of mosquitoes, the sunny field. It's all the campers, those lovable weirdos. It's the traditions we've kept and those we've lost, and even the strange magics at the edge of all things. Whenever it feels right, pick up one of the setting elements and have it support the game. While holding it, you control that aspect of the world. And it goes a little bit into an example and gives you the reminder that setting elements are also metaphors. So even if you aren't actually at the lake right now, maybe the lake setting card or setting element has something that fit the current situation. And so you can draw back on that and shape the world around you with this setting element, which I like to refer to as setting cards because they're all usually like 1 or 2 pages long, so you can easily print them out and have them as like literal cards next to you.
Yeah, no, I really like this system because someone goes off alone and we're focusing on that one person, and then suddenly someone picks up one of these cards and starts influencing this other character.
Yes.
Which we will get to these setting cards in a bit.
Yes, they're a little bit further down.
There's a whole bunch of them. There are even some more unnatural setting cards. They're very interesting.
Yes. I think the easiest way to explain this is even the setting itself, like each location is its own character in a way.
Yes, yes.
And basically, like, because you're all playing this together and you're all the DM in a way, you can all decide, oh, I want to do something in this with this location. And for a period of time, you basically control that location. And that's a really fun way to approach collaborative storytelling.
Yeah. It's very unique.
Yes.
I've never seen a game go out of their way to say, but the lake is also a character.
Yes. I've seen that Possum Creek Games does that in a lot of their games. They also do that in Wonder Home, which is where I've seen that first. So
yeah,
I kind of was really happy to see that in this game too, because it's such a different way of approaching storytelling.
For sure.
They also have this other thing called rituals, which are a little bit more out there and not quite like the setting elements or the characters, but I don't know how to explain rituals. They're quite esoteric in my mind, if that makes sense.
They're a little abstract.
Yeah, they're kind of out there, but basically when a ritual is happening, you can only communicate using the moves printed on the ritual itself. So it's kind of like an interlude of sorts. At least that's how I interpret it as. But we'll get to that towards the end, because I think the rituals are towards the end of the book as well.
Yes.
So
they are towards the end of the book. We'll talk about that more abstract aspects in a bit.
Yes. And now we get to I think one of the most interesting parts before we actually dive into the character sheets themselves is just the Lindworm itself.
The Lindworm is amazing.
Yes.
If you don't mind me reading this section.
Of course, go ahead.
The Lindworm is the monstrosity that haunts our summer camp. It is the bane of our existence and will destroy everything we've built if we're not careful. It is the trauma of history, the collective pain of a cruel society, and the violence afflicted upon the marginalized and the vulnerable. It is generally around 10 feet tall with arms like tree branches, papery flesh, and a mouth full of too many teeth. It is a shapeshifter and will steal people's skin after flaying them alive. At the beginning of each session, someone in the group must ask the space you're in if the Lindworm is there and if it would like to play. Give it around 30 seconds to reply. If it isn't there, a player is secretly chosen to act for the Lindworm for the session. Do this silently. Set aside cards equal to the number of players. One must be the Queen of Spades. Shuffle and deal one card to each player face down. Look at your cards privately. The player who receives the Queen of Spades is chosen. Once everyone has nodded that they understand what card they received, return the cards to the deck without revealing them. Now this next part is very important. This is the hardest and fastest rule in this entire book. No player roleplays as the Lindworm.
Yes.
The chosen player discovers the Lindworm's actions through the deck of cards. When the players invite the Lindworm to act, all players close their eyes. The chosen player channels the Lindworm and looks at the top 3 cards of the deck. The channeling player chooses one of the cards, places it as the Lindworm sees fit, and puts the other 2 on the bottom of the deck. Then they close their eyes and knock on the table. It is up to everyone to interpret the meaning of the card. Based on the Lindworm card action tables on page 74 to 77. For example, if the Lindworm's card is the 3 of diamonds, biting at skin, anxiety, long scrape marks on a tree, and the card sits on a specific player's character sheet, then it is clear that the Lindworm's action centers on that player character. Players should interpret the Lindworm's play as brutally as possible, building from some or all of the card's cues. Sometimes cards will appear in specific places on the map, or engage with the space in other ways. Sometimes the actions of the Lindworm can be explained as the actions of the strangeness, which I'll explain what the strangeness is in a bit.
Yes.
That's okay. Life rarely ties together neatly. If a player uses a strong move, they may soften the Lindworm's action. This doesn't remove the consequences, but allows you to redirect them. If the Lindworm's action would kill someone and that action is mitigated, someone must still die. On one final note, never roleplay as the Lindworm, no matter what. The Lindworm is an entity that we cannot understand.
Yes.
It exists behind us. It exists beyond us. Do not roleplay.
Yes. This section, I think, is what really got me into this book. It is what actually, like, piqued my interest. And now, reading it like this, I actually fully understand what is also said on, like, how to interact with the cards. Because I'm now realizing that, like, this game is very much intended for you to be played when camping with your buddies. So you're all gonna be sitting in a circle with your character sheets on the floor, the map on the floor. And so when the person that is channeling the Lindworm is placing down the cards, that is how said cards can land on locations, other character sheets, etc. It took me a second to fully understand how it would, like, affect a specific character or anything. I
Right.
thought that it had something to do with the cards drawn at the beginning, where, like, everyone kind of gets a specific card for themselves. But after reading it like this, I feel like that doesn't make quite as much sense.
Right.
But
This, what you just said, kind of leads up to my biggest complaint about this game. This game is not very friendly to play online.
yes.
That is my biggest complaint. This is an in-person game. This is a game you play with your friends, sitting around a table or having a picnic or some shit.
Yes. There is ways to, like, kind of mitigate that with, like...
Of course.
I think, like, actually tabletops might be the closest you could get because you can kind of flick cards and, like, eat them and stuff like that.
Right,
But,
that might be a good option.
but that is, like, the only, like, sim I can think of that could fully encapsulate, you know, the way you would go about playing this game. And, like, not
Right.
even fully, it's like, you know, 70% there.
For sure.
But yeah, I do...
It's interesting.
Yes. I actually... This is a slight tangent, but I actually think that this game would do amazing as, like, an actual, like, you know, having a standalone client so you can play online, and it's like the AI, like, an AI acts as Lindworm, and you still...
Ooh, that'd be so good.
kind of similar to, like, isn't there, like, a Witcher standalone board game version or something. It's a real tangent, but like,
Gwent?
no, maybe no, but I'll think on that later. But I know there's some board games that have like digital versions where you can actually play and emulate the feeling of playing in person a little bit easier because the AI covers some things that, you know, you would need real interaction for, like, for example, here, the Lindworm and all that.
Right.
Of course, it would take away some of the fun of it.
Mystique.
Yes, but I think, like, if my options are not playing it at all, playing it on tabletop sim, or maybe having a standalone sim, or, like, standalone game for it, you know, those are the best options.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It really is. The best option is do it in person or use tabletop sim.
Yeah. And that's kind of a shame, in my opinion. I kind of wish...
It is my biggest complaint.
Yes. And especially with, you know, world events currently, it makes it really hard to,
Yes.
you know, actually play the game as intended.
For real. So, the next section is the section we've been waiting for. It is character sheets.
Yes.
I love
Oh.
these fucking things.
Yes.
They're so interesting.
I don't think we should go through all of them. Kind of leave some out for people to discover themselves.
Yeah, definitely.
I have a couple that I really like that I highlighted. You should have them on your PDF as well.
I
It's highlighted.
I do.
Okay, cool. But first up, the entire group together makes the summer camp. So you basically take out a bunch of note cards. You draw each of the locations. Then each player chooses one of like the following options, like the performing stage, the hidden picnic bench, the mushroom log. Then as a group you choose two of the following, like culture of honesty, minimal camper drama, protected property. And each player then goes on to detail one of the following things, like where the fire pit used to be, where frogs used to sing. So it's really collaborative in how you shape the summer camp, and it also really helps make sure that each time you play this, it's a different experience. It's never going to be the same summer camp. I wish it kind of explained a little bit more what they mean for the where each player and as a group chooses. If, like, is it something you draw out on a piece of paper, like with the first couple ones, or is it just something you detail and talk about?
I think it's something you just detail and talk about.
Yeah, I kind of wish there was just a tiny bit more guidance, because there's a lot open to interpretation, which sometimes makes things a little bit hard for me. I like knowing exactly what to do, but that's just, you know, my own, like, neurodivergence and all that. And the thing that I think I like the most is that even if you've never played this before, the group gets to talk about what happened the last time you were at camp. And there's a bunch of, like, all of these are somewhat bleak when you look at them. It's like, oh, half the camp danced into the lake and woke up freezing. One of your friends died. Each of you got a scar in the same place on your faces. It's very horror game-esque, or just horror-esque.
Can we talk about the one where flayed animals roamed the woods?
Yeah, that's...
Can we talk about that?
I don't know if we should.
Let's not.
Like, just that sentence alone
causes me great distress.
Yes, I feel not great thinking about that.
So, Monty.
Yes.
For the character sheets, how about each one of us choose one counselor, and we'll talk about those, and then we'll go to the next segment.
Yes,
Just to kind of save time.
Yes, I'm quickly gonna bring us to the other scene that I have, so I can pick one of the pages real quick.
Of course.
Because, like, I have 3 that I really like, but... Okay, God, this is again where I wish there was bookmarks, please. I'm scrolling so much. Have you already decided on one?
I already know the one I'm going to talk about, so.
God, I saw what you post in chat. Please stop. Which one? Which one?
I was
were
going
you
to talk about the lifeguard.
Okay. I actually have that open right now, so I'm gonna.
Okay, fantastic.
So you can go ahead and start off with that.
All right. So, the biggest thing to know about all these characters is the titles, the lifeguard, the counselor, and all of that. That is their job at the summer camp. Very important. So, the picture isn't the person you're playing. There's a whole bunch of different prompts to make this character, but each one has its own special identity.
Yes.
So I'll just read the Lifeguards intro, and we'll just kind of go from there.
Mm-hmm.
Some people might become lifeguards to avoid having to do the hard work at camp. This lifeguard is not one of those people. It takes a special kind of strength to be willing to drop everything and jump into the waves to save a kid you've never met before. The lifeguard is here to protect their friends in the camp, weathering everything the universe could throw at them with the same dogged smile. The lifeguard is an unbreaking individual. Their power is in mutual aid, physical defense, and self-sacrifice. This is very important. That ending line is very important to me because these characters don't have superpowers.
They're just humans.
They find powers in themselves.
Yes.
You cannot take those three things, mutual aid, physical defense, and self-sacrifice. That is what this character is based around. Emotionally and physically. And mentally.
Yes.
So, the play to find out is really interesting. What aren't you willing to sacrifice? Are you actually selfless, or does your selfishness just look different? Will you leave the camp behind?
Those are scary questions.
They are. They're really rough, and each one of these classes has these.
Yes.
And even answering one of them.
Yes.
Yes, I'm so glad you like that, Treble. It's just kind of us talking. We didn't want it to be anything extreme. Just hang out.
Just letting you know that is Kumo on his YouTube account.
You little... beat you up.
Anyways.
Anyways.
Immediate change of tone. Great.
You know it. I'm not gonna cuss in this stream.
Yes.
So, choose your name, a short name, a name that's easy to yell. I really like that one.
Yes.
A sharp name, an honest name. Choose one of those four. Mark. I don't know. Jeff.
I mean,
Fuck. It could be
Cole.
anything you want.
It's literally Cole
exactly.
that fits some of these.
Describe your look. Watchful eyes, warm eyes, hardened eyes, or watery eyes. I really like these. Just you can just tell a lot by the way people look at you with their eyes.
Yeah.
A coiled body, a lithe body, proud body, stocky body, built like a wall. It's not weight. It's what is your character? What is their silhouette?
Yes.
And here's one of my favorite little details. Describe your gender. A nice boy, Wonder Woman, a savior and a saint, eagle, castle, lighthouse in the darkness, relatable. It's not male or female. It's whatever the fuck these are.
Yes.
I just said I'm not gonna cuss. I just cussed. We're going in live.
I do wanna, as like a trans person, it is. I think this is very hard to actually explain, but I totally understand what each of these genders are. It is like, to me, gender is a feeling of sorts. Like, you know, it's kind of like, to some people, their gender is himbo, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's just what it is. And all of these do come with like certain connotations, and that's kind of what helps you shape the character. Like, someone whose gender, for example, is eagle would probably be more watchful personality-wise, have that certain type of edge to them. It's all like still ingrained in their personality, not so much as to like their physical features or whatever. And I like that. I like that it kind of... that it goes kind of wild with this. But I can see a lot of people who aren't used to, like, especially gender talk and such, to really understand this section. But I think it keeps it equal for everyone, in a way. Also, I think it very nicely debunks the whole I identify as an attack helicopter dumb meme stuff, because it's like, haha, joke's on you.
Right.
You know, it's kind of like taking that, what is used as an insult against people like me, and just kind of being like, okay, so what? And kind of turning it into a positive thing. But yes, I'll let you keep going.
Thank you, and thank you for that. So, choose your childhood fear. Wolves that kidnap your friends. That's pretty terrifying, even now. Disease is undetected until it's too late. Also, pretty terrifying. Being excluded. Let's not lie here. That sucks.
Yeah.
Small insects that live in your ears. I'm still afraid of that. A current too fast to outswim. Now that's real.
Yeah.
Choose an outside relationship. Questions like these are really good for building a personality.
Mm-hmm.
A little brother who misses you. A best friend who used to work here, and that doesn't mean you could connect this. What if that best friend was the person who died last time?
God.
What if they just decided not to come back? What if they're too afraid to come back because of something?
Mm-hmm.
Right? A support game. An old house you think of as home. A family. Each one of these radically changes who this person is, and I love these little questions. Then choose what keeps you working here. The kids, your friends and the staff, the land, the chance to save people, and the one I love the most, you've forgotten why, but want to remember. It's just interesting. These characters are built on all of these little prompts and questions. And everyone is going to take these radically different.
Yes. Two people might end up with the exact same choice for, like, prompts. But that character's still going to be radically different from each other.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Then, ask 2 total to other players. And I really like interacting with players during character creation. It's very fun. How did I save you from metaphorically drowning? This character is a bulwark. They're the lifeguard.
Mm-hmm.
How did they help someone? This next one is very... I would use it with caution. Are you still in love with me? That's a rough question.
Yeah.
And the next one is one that very deeply resonates with me. When's the last time we fought? That's a rough question.
Yes. I do like all of these questions can be interpreted differently too.
Yes. I very much like that. And so then the tips, and this is very nice. Make strong choices to not help people when you should, or vice versa. The lifeguard has issues not helping people, or when to help people. Sometimes they're overbearing. Sometimes they're aloof. Who knows? It depends on your character.
Mm-hmm.
Keep coming back around even if you should leave. Make your character fallible and relatable. That last one is on every single character sheet.
Yes.
It's very important. These are people. Act like it. People have flaws.
Mm-hmm.
Then if we go down a little bit more, we get into the actual mechanics. All of that was just prompts to learn who this person is.
Exactly.
Now, very important. A lure is interaction with the rest of the party. Everyone has a different lure. Every time someone asks for your help to stay afloat, they gain a token. Anytime someone says, "Lifeguard, I need your help," the person who asked this question gets a token to use a strong move. You don't get that. You generate tokens for other people by being there to help and being asked.
Yes.
I love that, and every counselor has this.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we're going to start with the strong moves, which require a token to use, and remember, you either use someone's lure to gain a token, or you use a weak move to gain a token. Now, everyone has this one, get out of harm's way. So, such as if the Lindworm draws a card that straight up says death, and it is placed in front of you, you may use a token to get out of harm's way. Someone must still die, but you are safe. As the lifeguard, do you really want to kill someone else? Get out of harm's way may not be the best option. The next one, keep pushing forward, even as everything tries to stop you. The lifeguard is described as indomitable. Something about them pushes them forward. Right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't be stopped as long as you're trying to help. And then, strong move, this is insane. Just the ability to do this. Get someone breathing again, even if they shouldn't be able to. And the last one, and this one is very scary. Reinterpret the Lindworm's play in a way that directs the move at you. You can legitimately sacrifice yourself at any time.
And I'm pretty sure the lifeguard in particular had the theme of self-sacrifice at the beginning of their intro, so...
Mm-hmm. So, and then there's the two ask questions, and I really like these ask questions. How can my character help yours heal? And another question is, why is your character holding themselves back? The lifeguard is about trying to help other people heal and be themselves that they can be, even if they're overbearing and can sometimes put their foot in their mouth.
Yeah.
It's someone who wants to help, even if they're annoying. It's awesome. It's fun. So we're going to go down to the regular moves. And everyone has the top one. Take action, leaving yourself vulnerable. Everyone has that. It's very important to know. They may shoulder a burden, someone's secret, carrying someone who's hurt, trying to help someone, holding the door shut as something tries to get in, being the villain so then other people can be happy. Shoulder a burden. It doesn't matter what the burden is. Share genuine emotions with another. That's just really sweet.
Yes.
Even if it's, I'm afraid or I hate you, as long as it's genuine.
Mm-hmm.
Provide useful advice. This character is not quite sage-like, but I feel they have that goofy wisdom.
Yes.
That, well, why don't we just do this? And everyone looks at them and is like, what? That's the dumb... That might work. What? I feel like that's this character.
Yeah.
And I love that. And then, tend to someone's wounds. And remember, there is no health in this game. When someone is hurt, they are simply hurt. And you have to remember that. The lifeguard has medical training. They're a lifeguard. They can help. Another ask, how is your character hurting? That's a very brutal question, but it's got to be asked sometimes. And then we get to the exciting ones, weak moves. Using one of these gives you a token. So, everyone has this. Invite the Lindworm to act upon your group. And this is where that special person who has been chosen to act for the Lindworm, everyone will close their eyes and they will draw 3 cards, choose one, and place it somewhere on the map or in front of a player to force the story and plot forward.
Yes.
As the people at the table or the picnic blanket all have to react. Another weak move is lose your temper at someone and ruin that friendship. That's rough.
That's a terrifying thing to even roleplay, but sometimes that is something that just happens.
Right? Give up at the worst possible moment. Botch a rescue in a potentially lethal way. Those are all heavy.
They sure are.
And I love them because of that. This game isn't afraid of asking people to roleplay hard situations.
Yes. And it's not afraid of asking the hard questions either.
Right? Well, I believe it is your turn to choose because this character is over.
Yes, trying to find where exactly. I think I'm gonna go with the one that was written by one of the co-writers. I'm gonna go with the song leader. So, for the song leader it says, camp music lifts us up and binds us together. In uproarious sing-alongs we find community. In heartfelt refrains by campfire light we find home. The song leader sings from a soul with carefully chosen words and a gentle touch, and their voice hits you square in the heart and makes you want to join in. If camp had a voice, it isn't that of any one person. It's the combined voices of each and every camper and staff member. But it's the song leader who spurs them along. The song leader is a tender individual. Their power is in their voice, the voice of others, and the togetherness of countless arms wrapped around countless shoulders. Play to find out. So basically, it's just the entire concept of being together, being with other people, and enjoying the time you have with other people. And I personally really like that. It kind of like resonates with me. It's the no one gets left behind sort of mentality.
Yeah,
at least that's
real.
how I interpreted it as. Then, when you play this character, you end up asking yourself the questions to find out is this place still home for you? Does singing together hold any real power in the face of violence and cruelty? Will your softness last the coming storm, or will it be worn away to reveal roughness and sharp edges? And I don't even know how to fully interpret these questions, because it's just... It reminds me of just how there's so many different flavors of songs, and how each of those can just reflect on your character, especially with that last one.
Yeah,
of
for
like,
real.
Can you stay gentle and soft and kind of be, what keeps the group together? Can you keep being that strong link or no? Or will you turn cruel? And that's a terrifying thing to think about. But I think it's necessary, especially in a game
Right.
like this.
Yeah, definitely. Because once again, this is effectively a horror game.
Yes. it doesn't feel like a horror game at times, but it just
No, it doesn't.
it's a horror game the deeper you go, but at the surface it does just feel like haha, slightly spooky camping adventure.
I think really this is one of those really beautiful games that depending on your group the vibes will be completely different.
Yes.
I feel like playing with me as a person, that horror element's going to be really apparent. I'm going to push for that. Because I find that more interesting.
Whereas, like, I think I would push more towards very subtle horror, more like, you know, creepy atmosphere, as opposed to, like, gory horror, for example. But I know that we've got friends who would probably push more towards, like, the gore aspect. Or, like, the, you know, oh, there's dead animals hanging in the trees. That's fun. And I do really like that. But anyway, for the, God, I keep forgetting names. Song leader, God. For the song leader, their names can be a name with a pleasing sound. A name used only here. A name that's fun to chant. Or a name never to be abbreviated. All of those, really fun. I personally like, for me, the one that resonates the most is the name only used at camp.
Right.
Because it shows that, like, yes, you're at camp to sing songs and be together with others, but outside of camp, you might be a completely different person. This might be your getaway. Then describing the song leader's look, curious eyes, thoughtful eyes, happy eyes, or gentle eyes. And they may have a delicate body, a fluid body, a stable body, a slow-moving body, or a body built for strong hugs. All things that I can definitely see amongst, like, you know, whenever I imagine being at camp or something. Because, like, I've never been to camp, but the way I imagine it is that there will always be, like, you know, one or two people who do sit there with their guitars and, you know, one might look like they're great for hugs and have, like, these really gentle eyes, whereas, you know, sitting opposite of them might be someone who just always looks curious at, like, the kids, the little campers, but might also be, like, you know, kind of slow-moving, kind of chillaxed, if that's a word people still use nowadays. The song leader comes with the following genders. Time to go into advertising mode. Blackberry Blossom, June Apple, Freight Train, Crawdad, Wagon Wheel, Quite Early Morning, or Blowing in the Wind. Very different vibes, and I can't get over how much I love this section. And another thing I do want to mention, like, for any of these, you don't have to go with the things that are on your sheet. You can make up your own things too, I'm pretty certain.
Oh,
so
yeah,
if
no, complete.
what's written here doesn't seem to fit what you feel like this character would be like, you can always change that. The song leader does also have some childhood fears, like a distant howling only you can hear, which I think we've all kind of had that. Nobody being able to see or hear you. Actual fear of mine. Terrifying.
Yes.
Going to sleep and never waking up. Also an actual fear of mine that keeps me awake at night. Your own face in the mirror. Or all of these. Gonna say the all of these option. This song leader is a broken person.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think that is what makes them so interesting, is because it feels like they themselves might be broken, but their entire point is to make sure that everyone else stays together. You know, in whatever way that means, whatever together means in this context. Whether it be with each other or just keeping themselves together so that an individual doesn't fall apart. Then unique to the song leader is their singing voice and the voice they speak in. It can be strong and grounded like an anchor, warm and welcoming like an embrace, playful and meandering like a chase through tall grass, intimate and honest like a promise to a friend, or haunting and full like the moon reflected in a lake. I think this part is what brings across the personality the most in roleplay. Just the way you talk and how you might sing and what your songs might be about. Another thing I did notice just now that I like, locations that actually appear in this game always are capitalized, like the lake, which has an actual setting card at the end. So I do like that. Just small thing I noticed that I think is a very neat touch. Then, you also end up choosing 2 songs. A group song no outside force could ever interrupt. A story song campers always listen to in quiet, rapt focus. A hiking song that always gives the tired and weak a boost of energy. A traditional song that provides insight into the camp's history. Or a cyclical song that always brings the camp dogs running. All of these, I think, really feed into, like, the idea of, interacting with the campers and including the campers in some sort of way.
Yeah.
Because all of these, in a sense, are group songs. Whereas the group song obviously is, when everyone sings together, but all of these talk about the campers or the camp in some sort of way. And it makes me happy. That's all I can really say about that. So, next up, you also ask 2 in total of these questions to some of the other players. Why did we grow apart all those years ago? It's an awful question to ask, and also a very deep and raw question, in my opinion.
Yeah, that is a really raw question.
Then, what song best represents our relationship? I like that one because it also can get you talking even after the game is over, because this is something I can actually see myself asking just my friends. And then, what have you said to me, but never to anyone else? I can't even begin to describe how this can lead to so many problems.
Yeah.
But in a good way, because that is, one of the things this game focuses on is conflict and, messing up. Earlier it did say, sometimes, don't be afraid to blurt something out to the completely wrong person. And this would be one of those questions that could lead to that.
Right.
As tips for playing this character, you always make sure to describe your songs in terms of imagery they evoke. So you don't just sing the songs, you talk about the stories behind the songs or how they make you feel. Then make sure to let your voice carry, but find places to lift up other voices too, especially those of less developed characters. So this one is definitely to kind of encourage being more extroverted in playing a character. Overall, I think the song leader is not one, if you are introverted, to play as your first character. But it definitely helps other players who are more introverted. Harkening back to we're all together in this, which is the big theme of the song leader.
Yes.
And then, of course, make your character valuable and relatable.
I love that.
Yes, of course, everyone's got that. For the songwriter's lure, every time someone answers your voice with their own, echoing your words, sentiment, or tone exactly, they get a token. So, what that means is if you resonate with people, or if people resonate with you, they get a token. And I think that that's really beautiful in a way. Because it shows the, mutual understanding between people.
Right.
Okay, let me just stretch real quick.
Oh, take your time. We've been sitting down for a while. Stretch wouldn't hurt.
So for the strong moves, which, cost a token, we've got the one that everyone has as with Get Out of Harm's Way, obviously. Then Help Someone Find Their Voice. In whichever way that means. Sometimes that means helping them. Sometimes that might also mean, lifting them up so that they can quite literally have a turn to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Sing someone tired peacefully to sleep. With, how the camp is all set up, that is something that will be needed every now and then. Ease tensions with a song everyone knows by heart. Again, going into the kind of trying to keep things lighthearted, trying to keep everyone's spirits uplifted. And then reinterpret the Lindworm's play, redirecting it with raw emotion. Which is a scary thing to think about.
Yes. It's a little bit more abstract.
Yes, but
But
I think it can lead to, considering that it's raw emotion, it is something that very focuses on, like, being in tune with yourself and the other players and campers.
yeah.
And that's important. That's something that's important to not just yourself, but also others, to be able to just, show your emotions as they are. The question that comes with all that is, what does your character most want to hear from mine right now? Being, the one also going into the, like, being kind of there for others. Helping them. Lifting them up. For regular moves, we got the Take Action, Leave Yourself Vulnerable one that everyone gets. Illustrate the power of a song. Very abstract, but I really like that because it helps, with the whole, an action or like a regular move can go either way. The power of a song can cause something negative, but it can also cause something positive.
Right.
Then call out and wait for a response. Terrifying.
Yes.
Step out of the light and pass the melody to someone else. So I think this is an interesting one because the song leader does tend to be more towards, for the extroverted players out there. So it's just like, hey, it's okay to step away from the spotlight, have someone else speak.
Right.
And I like that that's just part of the character to, like, remind people that, like, hey, it's okay to be in a spotlight, but also let someone else do the singing for a little bit.
For sure.
And the last one is another very abstract one. Hang your head over. Hear the wind blow. I'm gonna be real. I have no idea how to interpret that one at all.
I have a few ideas.
Oh, go ahead.
That's just kind of feel how things are going.
Oh, yeah.
You know how you can just, like, stop, take a deep breath, recenter yourself? I think I have an idea.
That sounds about right. One thing I find really interesting is with the song leader, we don't get questions for their regular moves. Like, the lifeguard had, like, 2 of them, I think.
Right.
Then for weak moves, obviously invite the Lindworm to act upon the group. Get involved in a conflict that's none of your business and try to mediate. Which is something I think we've all done at some point.
Oh, yes.
And more often than not, it doesn't go well, which I can totally see why you would get 1 token for it, because it usually ends with it leaves yourself worse off than before.
Oh,
Then
yes.
be overcome by someone else's fear, anger, or grief. Playing entirely into the compassion aspect, into the empathy aspect of this character. And then lead a song half-heartedly and lose its power forever.
Ouch.
Yes. Obviously, again, somewhat more, abstract than the Lifeguards' very direct way of,
Yes.
talking about moves. But I know what this means, but I don't think I can put it into words. I know that if
Yeah.
I were to take this move, I know what I would have to do to make this move. And then ask, how has camp lost its magic for your character? Kinda, going into the whole being somewhat disillusioned about camp. Is camp still your home? Is it time to move on to other things? Which was part of the beginning questions for this character. So it all ties back
Right.
full circle. And like these are just 2 of the like 8 or 10 characters. I don't quite know how many there are, but there's a
so
lot.
There's also a very interesting thing. Character death is a fact in this game.
Yes.
Someone will die.
Yes.
There are 3 special characters that you can only play if your previous character died.
Yes.
They're very interesting. We'll get to them in a bit. We're not going to read all of them. We may only read like 1.
Yeah, I think it's fair to only read 1. For the setting elements, I'd also say we maybe decide on 1, maybe 2 at most. Because...
I was thinking we just read the description of them and then just move on.
Okay, yeah, sounds good.
Because these are mostly just like lots of gameplay info,
Yes.
which we don't really need right now.
Exactly. Should we include the tips?
Let's not go too deep into that.
Okay.
And I say we really only need to read one of these, honestly.
Yeah, which one do you want to go with? If you have a favorite one, let's go with that.
I'm gonna go with the lifeguard one. We're gonna go with the lake.
Okay, sounds good. Let me scroll down to
Mainly
it.
because the lake is a very interesting thing to talk about.
Yes.
Because it goes really heavy into the metaphor.
Mhm.
So if we go down to the lake is where secrets go to die. And once again, these are setting elements. These are those setting cards that if someone isn't there, or even if they are there, they can take one, and they can force the rules of this area into the role-playing session.
Yes.
So it's very interesting. So the lake is where secrets go to die. When it is present in the story, it seems to cover up and distort truth by swallowing it under the waves. Although the lake is not an agent of the Lindworm, it can often work in the Lindworm's favor, hiding its influence and putting others in danger. The lake is a hungry place. It desires to conceal, to feed on secrets, to smother, to kill, to grow beyond its banks, to seduce, to lure, and to keep the truth hidden beneath its waves. Anyone can start with the lake except for the lifeguard. The lifeguard never ends up with the lake unless it makes perfect sense.
This is where the lifeguard goes to die.
Basically. And once again, you take this card when you enter the lake, or you need to talk about the lake, or when it feels right to take it.
Yes. And sometimes that might just be metaphorically. Like when you talk about, this first sentence, the lake is where secrets go to die. When you want to cover something up, distort the truth, etc. Then things about the lake might be, good to pick up. And just like with the characters, there's a bunch of things like, oh, you pick this up, you give it away when. There's some aesthetic elements on how to, make this lake unique to this game. And it has its own moves, similar to players, just that setting elements do not have to worry about tokens. They just get to do their moves.
Yep, they just do their thing.
Yup, and after every move, you ask, what do you do?
Mm-hmm.
And that just helps keep the game going. Then obviously...
It's very interesting.
Just okay. Apologies, my OBS just disconnected for some reason. But...
Nice.
Yeah, it happens. Anyway, as you saw with the previous setting element, as I just scrolled past it, there is magic in this, but it is abstract. It's just nature in a way.
Yeah.
But you can find out about the magic of this game if you read it yourself.
Yeah.
the next one that's kind of important, and actually very important because it's touched on multiple occasions, and it feels
touched on a lot, especially towards the Lindworm section.
Yes, and it kind of feels like a more important and integral setting element than some of the others.
Right.
So I'm gonna read this real quick. The strangeness are the old creatures of the world who arrived to this barren earth long before we did, and carry with them the rats and pests and squirming pieces of faraway lands. They have blood on their hands, but they do not allow it to faze them, preferring instead to dwell on what could have been. The strangeness knows about things they shouldn't, and have many secrets and truths to offer, if you'll listen. Sometimes the strangeness is just a possum that keeps walking after getting hit by a car. Sometimes it is an entire commune beneath the hills, with their own laws and a god made of broken concrete. They are not the Lindworm, but perhaps they can help. Read the act instructions for whether or not the strangeness should be in play, or if there's something more explicit, such as a strangeness setting element found later in this book. It's the subtle things. Everything about the strangeness is the subtle things that may be going on in the background, and you may not be noticing them until they become apparent. And once these things become apparent is when you would be picking up the setting element.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a bunch of, like... It's probably the most interesting one because it tells you to keep track of strange events. It has really interesting moves, and it has a strangeness table, which, if the setting element is in play, you kind of keep track of its themes, and then you use this table to see what the strangeness manifests as. It could manifest as a murder of crows, the slumbering beast, the Underhill King, etc. It's so abstract, but it's, the odd things. The odd things in life when you're just out in the woods and you hear something and it just makes you uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
That's all this boils down to.
So I will say, for the next one, character sparks is something we can kind of skip.
Yes, it's basically how to make NPCs of sorts.
Yes.
It's how to make the campers and other NPCs. It's really interesting, uses the game like the deck of playing cards on how to build them, and has like some tables that give you basically some like character traits. Really interesting, really fun way to make NPCs, but we can really skip over this.
It's not important to what we're talking about. We're talking about the overall game, not the little nuances.
Exactly. I think this next part is important. It's the whole Lindworm thing and how to channel it and what it's about.
And act structures and all of that, which is really the meat of the game.
Yes. I think there are things we can still abbreviate here in a way.
Yes, I agree.
Yes. Do you want to take the lead on this, or should I, or...?
Yeah, I'll take the lead on this.
Okay.
I'll just read the first page, and we'll paraphrase from there.
Yes, exactly. Sounds good.
Just because I don't want to spoil a lot of this book. This
Yes.
book is very interesting to read. Channeling the Lindworm. It is the monster that makes the world bleed with arms like tree branches and far too many teeth. There is always someone to profit from the suffering of children. The Lindworm is a shapeshifter, a skin crawler, something that can steal the skin of a human, flaying them alive and live inside of it. It doesn't need to, of course. There's just something so fun about the way naked tendons dance before falling still. You do not roleplay as the Lindworm. No one roleplays as the Lindworm. Instead, you decide the Lindworm's actions from its deck, channeling the Lindworm's ghost hovering over the table. When it's time for you to decide the Lindworm's actions, everyone closes their eyes. Wait a second, wait a moment, and then open your eyes. Choose one of the top 3 cards from the deck and place it in a way that makes the Lindworm's meaning as clear as you can, in front of a specific person or sitting atop the deck to indicate its general atmosphere. Afterwards, knock on the table and then close your eyes as well.
And this is because no player knows who the person channeling the Lindworm is. It's why everyone closes their eyes. It's why you also have to close your eyes back before, like, as you knock on a table, so that it's just like, yup, this is just the Lindworm acting, not any of us. But yeah, some of the tips I did find very interesting. It is just kind of going a little bit more again into how brutal the Lindworm is. Like, you know,
Which
it's sadistic.
I would like to read one or two of them, just to like drive that home. The Lindworm enjoys playing with its food. The Lindworm avoids hearts cards unless it has no choice. Hearts are typically positive things that happen.
Yes.
It doesn't like to do positive things.
Yes.
The Lindworm prefers choosing cards with the symbol of the current act on it, just to kind of amp up.
Yes, and that is more towards the like campaign bit towards the end, because this game does follow a structure. I don't think you can play this without the structure. I mean, you could, but it'd be a little bit more messy.
Okay, so here's the last one I want to talk about. And this one is really fucked up. But it's gotta happen. The Lindworm first kills animals, then adults, then children, then finally the characters. Always in that order.
Yeah, that's fucked up.
Yes.
And also really scary. But it does help, you know, helps us as the counselors focus on, no, we have to keep the campers safe. And because the campers are more of a priority than we are, we have to make sure to keep them safe. It helps, just... Oh, what's the word? It cements the idea of being a protector.
Yes.
Then...
Now, the next 4 tables...
Yeah, are just how to interpret the cards. I think people should read over them themselves. There is some, there is some really scary shit on there. Like, destroying minor characters where a camper is found dead, etc. And some of them might introduce other setting elements that are specific to the Lindworm.
Yes.
Which leads us to the next bit, which is the one-shot and the campaign. I don't know how much in-depth you want to go about those.
Honestly, I think we shouldn't go in depth about them.
Okay, good. That's what I was thinking too.
I think we can skip them.
Okay, cool. That's what I thought too.
Because honestly, if you want to play this game, this is something you should read yourself.
Yes.
It would help you a lot more than us just rambling on about it.
Yes. And it'll help you come to your own conclusions as well. Then, after all of the one-shots and such, we get actually to the strangeness, which is the odd things going on, which also is some of the characters you can, or character archetypes you can play if your character ends up dying.
I have one I would love to talk about.
Which one?
It is the Orchid.
Okay, let me scroll down to the Orchid.
Unless you want to talk about the Found Again, because the Found Again is very good.
No, we can talk about the Orchid.
Okay, so these 3 characters, the Found Again, the Guide, and the Orchid, are special characters. They are characters you can only play once your previous character has died. It is very brutal, but this makes it so then character death is not necessary, but it is interesting because you introduce a stronger character into the setting.
Yes.
Because the characters that you're playing have been growing stronger as you go. They've been learning, they've figured out who they are more.
But
and
also,
so...
I do want to bring up, whilst these characters might be stronger, they're also broken in different ways.
Yes. They need healing that the party can provide.
Yes.
So, the Orchid Sometimes we sink so deeply it takes years to emerge. And the forces of the world keep pushing us down until we end up somewhere we never thought we'd be. It makes sense then that there are those of us who found comfort in the strangeness, and threw it a way to return to the surface to once again bloom. The summer camp is a refuge for anyone who needs safety from the violence of the world, and sometimes our old friends find their way back to our doorsteps at the strangest time. The orchid is an unnerving individual. Their power is grounded, mysterious, and draws upon those gifts granted by the strangeness. The orchid can only be played if your previous character died. Play to find out. Will you use your gifts selfishly or generously? Will you be able to lean on others for support? How will you relate to your past and those who know it?
And then obviously some of the character creation is still the same as before, but all of the things you can choose from are more strange in themselves. Like,
Yes.
The one that springs out to me is having, for example, a lunar name, a name that the strangeness gave you, or your gender just being void or moon queen.
Right. Then there's the choose two gifts, the hunger, moonlight, renewal and decay, culling the bones, the thrush's call, stuff like that. What do those even mean? It's up to you
Yes.
to decide that.
And because you have been in the strangeness so long, or with the strangeness so long, you end up with, being terrified and fascinated by odd things, having different histories, and having maybe dealt with hauntings. And I don't know, is the choose what you use to love section for all of them, or just the orchid? But either way, it is something that just shows that, oh, you lost something whilst you were in the strangeness.
Mm-hmm.
And that brings an entirely different and new and good dynamic to the table, I think.
Oh, yeah.
I do like, because it does, some of the questions do get repeated between characters. For example, the "what do I know about you that no one else does" is similar to what the song leader has. So it kind of ties characters together in that sense too, because they used to be camp counselors as well, most likely. Or maybe they were campers. So they would still have these things that connect them to the other characters in weird and strange ways.
Right. So now, the next things under the orchid is more setting elements, but they are strangeness elements instead. They are setting elements that are inherently magical in some way.
Yes. They're hard to explain, even if we were to go through them on stream. I think they're like so out there that you have a different interpretation from them than I do. And I think we could probably ramble about our interpretations for aeons.
I think we should honestly skip those.
Yes, I agree.
We know that setting elements are cards that someone takes up and acts upon the world through them. The strangeness elements are not bad, they're not good, they are bizarre and baffling and very interesting. Now,
Yes.
what is bad is the Lindworm elements.
Yes, there is only 2 of them, I think.
There is only 2. And they're both
they're
fucking
both-
terrifying.
Yes, they are.
I'll just go through a small description of them and we'll move on.
Yeah, sounds good.
The Lindworm, as you're drawing cards, can eventually put these 2 setting elements into play. They are terrifying. The Lindworm element, the bones, are flayed bodies of roadkill pets and farm animals that have been transformed into the mocking, hungry servants of the Lindworm. They exist only to remind us all of the pain the Lindworm has caused and the nauseating reality of what exists directly underneath our skin.
Terrifying.
The first tip of this sets the mood very well. Negotiate with your group a level of comfort with body horror. Once determined, go as hard as hell with that body horror.
Yup.
That says something.
That says
This
a lot
is
of
fucking
things.
gross.
Yup.
It's horrifying and unsettling. It's evil. That
Yes.
shit's evil.
Yeah, that is just straight up evil. I do like because the other one is similar, but it goes the opposite direction with Eldritch Horror.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just gonna read that real quick. The wolves were once a noble people, their hearts tied to the land and the winter, snow woven from their fur. The Lindworm came and disguised as one of them, flayed each and every one of them in this land. Now the wolves, lost and confused, wander these ancient woods, enacting the same violence forced onto them. First step just says, negotiate with your group a level of comfort with Eldritch Horror. Once determined, go as hard as hell.
I really like these two.
Yup.
They are disgusting.
Yes.
And they're best learned through gameplay.
Yes. I do like because they're the opposite sides of the horror spectrum, I think.
That which is familiar and that which is not. And
Exactly.
I really like that.
Yes. Okay, scrolling through these. Last part, at least I think this last part, is rituals. Which
It is the last part.
are, I think, in my personal opinion, I think rituals feel a little bit tacked on.
I agree on that.
But I think they're a fun thing to incorporate. I think you could totally play this without the rituals, but I think they're a fun thing to incorporate if you want to. It's basically things that you do when certain phrases or things are uttered. It's something to kind of take you out of the game for a second, I feel like. And there are some couple other effects it has on the game, but they each vary obviously from ritual to ritual. I don't know if you want to go into one of them. Each of them are a page long at most, I think.
Honestly, I say we don't need to do this. Rituals are
Okay.
very much I feel as if it's your party does it and it will change definition depending on who you're with.
Yes. The one thing I do want to say that I like about them, they each have you interact with each other in real life. It is often things where you, in real life, go and grab a piece of paper and douse it in water or something, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It has effects on the real world. And rituals are there to also kind of explain some of the spell and magic things in the game. Whereas, magic doesn't really exist, it's still the belief that's there. Kind of yep, we just hope that this works. And that's what rituals are. It's just kind of things your characters or you as the group would do and just go, yep, I hope that ends up working.
Right.
And they come in many flavors.
Oh, there's 9 of these.
Yep.
At least. The Daybreak Meadow, the Crossing Waves, A Moment of Identity, Spell Crafting, The Sneaking Path, Begging the Fates. There's so many.
Yes. The one that's really interesting to me is the last ritual, though.
Dead
which
Cricket?
which is basically a sort of game that you end up playing. And I think that one's just fun to do even without the context of the game itself.
Right.
So it's just something to bring you together as people. I think that's the ultimate purpose of the rituals, is just to bring you as the players and the characters together as people. And that's basically Sleepaway.
Yeah. As a final statement towards this game, This game is for people who want a cooperative experience with no direct leading player. It is a team building exercise, basically. You sit around a
Yes.
table, you talk, you have fun. No one is directing the stakes, everyone is.
Yes.
It is a game about horror, it is a game about sitting under the moon and talking about your feelings. It's a game about protecting others and discovering maybe we're not everything we say we are. But
Yes.
at the same time, we're so much more.
You put that in way better words than I could have ever put it.
Hey man, I do this a lot, so I might as well practice. So,
You know, fair.
Sleepaway is a fantastic little book. It's not very expensive. J Dragon does fantastic work. One of these days I would love to cover Wanderhome. It's a very
Yes.
similar structured game, but it is very different. Sleepaway is... its cons very much outweigh... I mean, its pros
Wow.
very much outweigh its cons to me. God damn, I can't even speak anymore. But its cons are quite glaring.
Yes.
It is a hard game to play, not in person.
And I think
But
that
when
is...
you do get to play it, yes.
I do want to say that is definitely something to take into account if you are getting this game, if you have people to play it with, in person, preferably.
This is very much a, hey guys, I have this game, would you be interested? At your gaming table. And it's a good choice. It's a very odd choice. It is not for everyone.
Yes.
I will say that right now, because I know some people who will look at this game and be like, what the fuck?
Yes.
But I love the design and the very free-form atmosphere it provides. It doesn't treat you like you're an idiot, but it doesn't try to overcomplicate everything.
Yes.
There's something just very earnest about it.
That's a good way to put it. I do want to say, if you want to buy this, do check... Okay, so it is on itch.io. If you bought the Black Lives Matter bundle way back, like the $5 bundle, you might already own this. So always check if maybe you've already owned this. Maybe it's just somewhere buried between all the PDFs that you might already have. And it's a treasure to find and a treasure to play, I think.
Yeah.
Especially now with spooky season. And end of spooky season, literally next week. I definitely think that if you have a group to play this with, well, maybe you're meeting up with some people for Halloween, and they're interested in tabletop RPGs. It takes 3 to 4 hours to play the one-shot. Might as well do it.
Right.
But yeah, I think... I don't know how to end this, to be quite
I'll
honest.
end it for us.
Okay.
Thank you so much for everyone who showed up. Thank you so much for joining us for the first episode of Bugs in Battle. And I hope you enjoyed Sleepaway. With
Yep.
that, we're going to put out the fire and we're going to head out.